Well, welcome. Before we begin, I would like to give our AU land acknowledgement. The School of Education wants to acknowledge that Washington, D.C. is the traditional territory of the Choctaw, Anacostan, and Piscataway people. At American University School of Education, we acknowledge this legacy and find inspiration from this land. Territory or land acknowledgement is our way of recognizing Indigenous presence in our everyday life as a school. We, School of Education faculty, staff, and students have a responsibility to consider what it means to acknowledge the history and legacy of colonialism in our history as a nation, as a community, and as a School of Education. Throughout our program's curricula, we note the privileges we enjoy today because of colonialism, and we strive to not perpetuate colonial fertility. So thank you and welcome. Good evening. I'm Dr. Ocheza Joseph, the Director of Undergraduate Programs at American University School of Education. I am also a Senior Professorial Lecturer here in the School of Education. I'm honored to be moderating this webinar this evening, and I will be introducing our distinguished panel momentarily. I want to welcome you all to our first Big Ideas in Education webinar of the school year. Our Big Ideas in Education series was implemented by the American University School of Education in response to ever-changing education landscape on topics such as the school's commitment to anti-racism and equity in education to the COVID-19 response. We welcome experts so our students, faculty, staff, and larger community at our School of Education are engaged in conversations and projects focused on creating new, big, and innovative ways to resolve longstanding inequities in education. This year, our webinars will focus on the theme Transforming Education, the promise and impact of equity, civil rights, and justice. It honors the confluence of critical issues in U.S. education and schooling in this first quarter of the 21st century. While we anticipate the 70th anniversary of the landmark Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court ruling of 1954 and the 60th anniversary of the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the reality suggests that the promise of equity for all remains a dream unfulfilled. Every year, we see a record-breaking number of attempts to ban books, citing reasons including content deemed controversial, obscene, or otherwise objectionable by authorities. Today's session will weigh in on the history of banned books, what is happening politically today, and the potential impact on students in the future. PEN America, a network of more than 7,500 writers working to protect free expression worldwide, reports over 30 states have banned books in the last 2 years, with nearly 1,500 separate instances of banned books in nearly 200 school districts in the US, including nearly 900 unique titles. We support the International Alliance and Coalition of diverse organizations in the US and beyond, in efforts to engage communities, schools, parents, and students to be advocates and create awareness about the importance and freedom to read. In our School of Education, we pride ourselves on our mission that speaks to transforming society through our core values of excellence, equity, anti-racism, and social justice, diversity and inclusion, collaboration, and innovation. The week after Banned Books Week, we thank you for being here with us this evening, and welcome to the first Big Ideas in Education webinars of the school year. Now, let me introduce our distinguished panelists today. First, I would like to introduce Kiese Lehman, the Libby Shern Moody Professor of Creative Writing and English at Rice University. While his authored works and awards are too numerous to name here, a few include Long Division, which won the 2022 NAACP Image Award for Fiction, and the essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, named a notable book of 2021 by the New York Times critics. Lehman's best-selling memoir, Heavy, an American Memoir, won the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Nonfiction, the Christopher Isherwood Prize for Autobiographical Prose, the Barnes and Noble Discovery Award, the Austin Riggs Erickson Prize for Excellence in Mental Health Media, among others. Join me in welcoming Kiese. And next, I would like to introduce Tangi, Dr. Tangi Reed Marshall. Dr. Marshall brings more than 2 decades of experience in education to advance the work of practice on behalf of students of color, those experiencing economic uncertainty, those perpetually left on the margins of our education system. Dr. Reed Marshall is a nationally recognized and sought-after expert on educational equity and educational leadership. She has consulted with organizations throughout the US and abroad to improve educational leadership, stem the effects of systemic inequity, improve teacher instructional practices, and student outcomes. Dr. Marshall has presented at international and national conferences on topics related to educational equity and power dynamics, curriculum development, literacy, critical literacy, education leader, and teacher development in authentic pedagogies. Most recently, Dr. Marshall served as the director of P-12 practice at the Education Trust, where she led their work on assignment analysis work, performing educational equity audits, and designing a way to analyze curriculum to ensure representationally balanced depictions of people, cultures, and topics. Welcome. And we have David Saya, a 32-year veteran of public education, now the librarian of Penn Middle School, part of the Williamsville Central School District in New York. He chaired the American Library Association's 2023 Stonewall Book Award Committee, a National Children's Book Award for queer literature written for young people. He also served on the 2019 and 2022 Stonewall committees, as well as the 2021 John Newbery Medal Committee. He is also a graduate of American University and sits on the School of Education's Advisory Board. Welcome home, David. And tonight, we are in for another treat because we are joined by a special guest, Dr. Ingrid Bynum. Dr. Bynum is in her 17th year as a public school principal, and she is the current principal of Alexandra's Patrick Henry K-8 school. And guess what? She is currently our Mrs. Virginia America. And she is using her title to work with organizations such as Reading is Fundamental to ensure children who live in undeserved communities have access to quality literacy materials. She is an adjunct professor at Regent University, where she received her doctorate. She has won numerous awards to include the Reading is Fundamental of Northern Virginia's Literacy Luminary Award and the Washington Post Principal of the Year for Alexandria City Public Schools. What an awesome, distinguished panelist for sure. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, everyone, our format for our hour-long webinar will include general and specific questions to each panelist and opportunities for dialogue among the panelists. And I'll save some time at the end for panelists to respond to questions, which we encourage you to put in our Q&A. So please, 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 throughout this webinar, just write your questions in and we will do our best to get to them. So we're going to start off with a lightning round question where each panelist, if you can respond to one word or phrase that comes to your mind when you hear book ban. So lightning round, let's start with you, David.
Fear. I think book banning is an act of fear.
Thank you. Ingrid.
Shameful.
Thank you. How you say?
Pitiful. Pitiful.
Ingrid. I'm sorry, I already asked Ingrid. Tangi.
I think it's about power.
Look at that. Okay. this is really going to be good. I know our audience is like, wow, those words have gotten us started. And I don't know, Mrs. Virginia, can you kick us off? Because in your platform, you talk about all students having access to quality literacy. So can you tell us about your platform?
Yes, as a principal and Mrs. Virginia, I am on a mission to ensure that every child in the state of Virginia has at least one book of their choice. And this would definitely, in most, just my biggest part of the platform is to make sure children who live in underserved communities. I grew up in poverty in Richmond, Virginia. And I did not own my first book until fourth grade. And that was when the RIF van came, the Reading is Fundamental van came. And I got on the van and I chose a Beverly Cleary book, Ramona. And that one book changed my life. That book really sparked my love of reading. And then I read every Beverly Cleary book. The next, it was all of the Judy Blume books. And then that was it. It was everything that I could get my hands on from that point on. And I really know for me, I'm the only person in my family that's ever gone to college, still on my mom's side. And the books that I had really opened up educational opportunities and changed my life. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, I am living proof that books change lives. And I want to make sure that children who do not have a pathway right now for getting out of poverty, that this is the trajectory that they need to be on is education through reading. And I want to make sure that I can put that out there as much as I can.
Fantastic. Well, we are certainly excited, proud, and encouraged by you and your work, and we are here to support it. So thank you so much. And I guess, let me move to you, David, because in thinking about putting books, right, as she stated, putting books in kids' hands and children's hands. And so bans have had and continue to have a chilling effect on librarians, right? And librarians being afraid to acquire material that could be considered controversial. So in thinking about your work and your role with the American Library Association, what is done and how is that being addressed to support librarians?
Yeah, I think the American Library Association is obviously at the forefront of fighting book bans. There's the ALA Office of Intellectual Freedom. They track book bans across the country. They maintain many resources for fighting against them. ALA also has the Unite Against Book Bans initiative with resources and programming related to fighting book bans. And there are a lot of other organizations, such as the Freedom to Read Foundation. You mentioned PEN America. They're very important in that regard. Every library, the American Civil Liberties Union, and even down at the local library level, there are so many libraries that are fighting these book bans and trying to rush in to help with equity and access. Brooklyn Public Library not too long ago started a consortium of small but mighty consortium of public libraries in a program called Books Unbanned, and teens can get access to their digital collections regardless of where they live. So kids who are having their freedom to read taken away from them can still get access to books that speak to them. And no one who's fighting a book ban should feel like they're alone. Mm-hmm. And so there are so many resources out there. They just have to connect with those organizations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. So, in speaking of fighting and not having to do that alone, we have some states where it is just a little tougher, right? Where that's happening. And Tangi, this one is for you. And it's a long one. So let me get my notes right here. We have states like Georgia who have laws that limit teachers' ability to choose reading selections, which ultimately narrow the topics that they are allowed to incorporate into their lessons, right? And so these laws also give parents and community members who, by the way, have no formal training in this space in education or language arts for that matter, or the field of education. But they have the ability to dictate what students read and which limits what's covered in the curriculum. So also in Georgia, that same law continues to go on to say that issues of anti-racism, social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion are not topics that are to be discussed or promoted. And in fact, they should all be censored. I know, everybody's like, cringing, right? So Tangi, talk to us. Do you believe it's appropriate for parents to have rights as it pertains to this, or have we just gone too far?
Well, that's why when you asked about the one word, that's why my word was power, because at the heart of what this is, it's about power. First of all, let's be clear about what parents' rights are. Parents have always had the right to be determinants in what their students read. But those rights now are encroaching on the rights of other parents. So, I'm a mom, I was a classroom teacher, and if I did not want my children, which I never did, if I didn't want my individual children not to read something, I had the right to say, please offer an alternative. Parents still have that right. What's happening now is they are using this very kind of 1984 speak of liberty, which is actually constraint, and making it sound like we're fighting for liberty. But what they're doing is constraining other parents from making educational decisions for their children. So on the surface, every parent should have the right to dictate the learning of their child because they're the first parent. What their rights as an individual parent should never do is encroach on the right of another parent, which is exactly what's happening. It has gone too far because they are usurping and making decisions for other parents, which is outside their parental purview. And a lot of times these parents, and some of them aren't parents, so let's be clear about who they are. These are groups of individuals who have made a decision to enact power because what they have done is learned the laws and have begun to tease them apart and use them in ways that sound good. So if you think, oh yeah, parents ought to have the right to do this, if you don't kick the tires and you don't look under the hood, what sounds like liberty is the Pied Piper off the cliff. So we are now Pied Pipering off the cliff because people are hearing words like liberty, like freedom, like I'm a parent, I should have my right to control my child. And they're saying, well, of course I should. Who would say no to that? Nobody. But like I said, if you haven't kicked tires and you haven't looked under the hood, you are following the Pied Piper off the cliff. And that's where we are.
Power, yes. Thank you. Wow. Very, very powerful statement and a lot for us to think about. I appreciate that so much. So Sim Bishop has the metaphor that I know in our program here in education, our education department, that we use a lot. We talk a lot about books being mirrors and windows and sliding glass doors. It's discussed a lot. And just in case we have some audience members, some viewers who aren't familiar, I want to describe it a little bit, that books are mirrors when readers are able to see their own lives reflected in the pages. Books are windows when they allow readers a view of lives and stories that are different from their own. And books become sliding glass doors when readers feel transported into the world of the story and when they feel empathy for the characters. All right. So Kiese, this one is for you. When I think about, your work and what you shared with us through your memoir and your book, did you have a book that was a mirror for you? If so, what was it? If not, do you think you had one? How would that have been any different, when you think about your 9-year-old self? And there's a reason why I say that.
That's a great question. That's a great question. I just want to say two. One was this young adult book called We Hate Everything But Girls. And what's important about both of these books is that I think I found that book probably in fifth grade. So I was like 9 or 10. And I found it outside of the classroom. And one of the reasons it was a window is because I hadn't read books where the narrators were, our age, but they were girls writing about what they experienced in the world and really what they thought about boys in ways that felt like electric and sincere. So I was just like, I couldn't wait to turn the pages. I was reading it at night, almost like it was like Cinemax or something, but it was like, it was young adult, but I was so excited literally because I could see the language that some of the girls in my school use, but like I could see it in a book, and that made me just super excited. So it's sort of like a mirror and a window. But the book that really did it for me, I think more than more than We Hate Everything But Girls, was The Color Purple. I was lucky enough that Alice Walker let me write the introduction to her newest version of The Color Purple that came out last year, and that was the book that like the window that I saw was like I watched a narrator talk to God, and I watched a narrator talk to God as trees, as like this godly being that, my grandmother taught me was God. I watched a narrator talk to her sister in the language of godliness. And that ignited me and made me feel like books weren't just like something I had to like read so my mother would make me happy or read to get good grades. It made me feel like books were actually also, though I didn't have the words, like intellectually spiritual in a big way. You know what I'm saying? So for me, those were the two books. But of those two books, especially The Color Purple was a window into what could be done with the language when one really wrote soulfully and sincerely to a higher being.
That's amazing. Before I forget, I just want to tell our viewers, please, you have heard now from each panelist. They are fire. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A if you have them. And to our panelists right now, so you each have had one individual question that you responded to. Before we move on, is there a question that someone else responded to that you want to add to? You are welcome to, if you have something. I wanted to give you that opportunity. Perhaps if you want to share a book as well. I know, Mrs. Virginia, you shared your books and your favorite authors, but any question if you want to respond.
Yeah, I'll respond to Dr. Bynum when she talked about the Riff Band. I was born in New York City, and we had the bookmobile. And so, I lived in Bronxville Projects at the time, and like now you totally brought me right back to, the bookmobile would come, and I was a fan of pop-up books because the construction of pop-up books to me was really fascinating. And when my children were born and we had books literally everywhere, one of the things I always looked for were pop-up books for them. It was something about the wonder of the page that when you flipped it was always a surprise because you never knew what was coming. And those were the books that really got me into really liking reading and, learning how to read. And then I found this really interesting journal where it helped me make the connection between what I read and what I think. And it would also, on the cover, it said, how can I know what I think until I see what I say? And I thought about this in terms of being a reader, that you're literally inside the mind of somebody as they're thinking and saying, and you get this opportunity to be in relationship. Think about what you said, you read all of the Judy Blume books and all of the Ramona Cleary books. So you were in a relationship with a writer who was telling a story across a series of books. And so I thank you for the riff and brought me back to my whole, bookmobile days.
I love it. David, what kind of, go ahead. I see you.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll address the question of, the book that changed your life. For me, it was The Outsiders. I was in junior high when I read The Outsiders, as just about everyone is who's ever read The Outsiders. And it was a time in my life when I was questioning my sexuality and who I was and beginning that dawning early self. And The Outsiders showed me a group of young guys who were taking care of each other, who were looking out for each other, kind of the value of found family, which is so important at that age for everybody, really. And even though it's not a queer novel, it still really spoke to me. Although I feel like it kind of could have been a queer novel if they'd had a couple more days in that church, that it might have went that way. I don't know. I've always speculated that myself. So thank you for asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. And okay, so now we're like talked about parent rights, and we brought movies kind of into this. And thinking about that, what are your thoughts about treating books like we treat movies and give them ratings? So you have a section, if it's PG-13 rating, and parents need to give permission for the student to check out the book. What are your thoughts on that? And that is for all of you or any of you to respond.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm jumping in because I literally just read an article the other day where Texas is beginning to have this conversation about book ratings. Again, I think it could go either way, right? Like it could go either way. Inherent in it is what people say good intentions, right? Like there's a good intention in that. But when I was getting my doctorate, my dissertation chair would always say to me, when he would ask me, well, why did you put this? What was your intention on it? And I said, well, I had a good intention. And he said, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so we're on that road right now. Like we are literally on the road there right now. And so while it sounds good, I'm going to always ask the question, given the types of books that are on the pull-off shelf, right? They're on the shelf in the back room gathering dust. I'm concerned about which books will be rated and how will they rate them, right? So how do you rate, if something is historically accurate, how do you rate that? How do you rate that as something a child should not read because it's historically accurate? Who's going to be on the committee? In which way? We are a country that has 50 states, and every single state has its own Department of Education, and every single Department of Education has districts. So are we talking about universal ratings? Are we talking about district by district ratings? So there's a bigger question to be asked about the rating system, because while we have universal for music and movies, that's going to be trickier when we're thinking about books because there are so many. Right? Yeah, there's just a lot. There's just a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I just jump in and say, I was born and raised in Mississippi. That's my love. That's my heart. I live in Texas. And I just think my 49 years on this earth have told me if the state of Mississippi pushes anything and the state of Texas push anything, you actually probably want to disagree with that shit on the principle of it alone. So I didn't know that Texas was doing that, but now I'm sure that I don't think this should be done, precisely because if we look at like even movie ratings, what kinds of people were targeted, like in terms of like creators with the movies that they made? Queer creators, like film directors, Black film creators, like people made. I remember Martin Lawrence got an NC-17 because of the language he was using, right? And so I just think if we're going to go down, we have to ask who would be doing the rating and for what. And I as a writer, I don't want my books rated. But the question, I think that was such a hard question because the question is like, what do you want, right? And I just want to say, I have yet to see any study that shows that like young people reading adult content or whatever you want to call that has led to something terrible. I don't want to be the person on this thing that's like encouraging kids to read all kind of like violent, abusive art. I'm not, but I also just want to say I have not read a study or heard that young people reading things that adults deem violent or sexually whatever has led to blank. So I'm not sure why we would do it in the first place, but for real, I don't think you ever want to follow Mississippi and Texas into anything that is valuable for queer and or people of color, because they don't love us and they show it every time they make any sort of public policy decision.
I'll say there's so much wisdom in the answers we've gotten from Dr. Marshall and PSA, and thank you for that. I agree completely. As a librarian, how could I not? But I'll just say that if we put in a rate, well, I have like 20 different things to say. So you might need to, Dr. Joseph, you might need to be aggressive with the mute button on me in just a minute. But first of all, if we do a rating system, okay, every single fairy tale is going to have to be in like the PG-13 because, you know, burning witches alive, sure, you know, why not? Poisoning children, why not? You know, they're all grim, and yet we've been telling them to kids for, you know, centuries. But I agree, like, who's going to do this rating? You know, how is it going to be applied equally? I don't think so. I don't trust that that's going to happen. And given that book requests, you know, book banning requests have been revealed to be done by such a small number of people that's been alluded to before, then why are we giving so much power to such a small group of people? And I think that the best way, well, you know, why do we bend to this restrictive system? Why is everybody bending to this? And the best way to do this, if a parent has concern about the books that their child is reading, the best way to handle that is for the parents to discuss that with the educators and the librarians their child comes in contact with. And I'll stop myself because really we don't have time for me to continue.
This is good. No.
I
Agree.
also want to add
Yes.
in, just as an educator and someone who have 1,000 children in my building, and a lot of them, you know, don't want to read. It's a chore, because, you know, we're teaching them how to read for pleasure. And I think if we start putting, you know, restrictions more so than there already are, we are going to then curb the interests of children. And especially when you're little, you want to read, you know, all the way from K through 12, you want to read on your interest. And it's already enough things competing for the minds of children. We want children to be able to love what they're reading. And, you know, who really cares if there's something that, you know, let me just put it this way, it never killed any of us. So we, you know, we read with what we wanted to read and our interest. And I definitely believe we should let children have choice. It goes back to freedom. And it's what's happening all over this country. I could go on a tangent about women, you know, and not being able to have freedom over our bodies. Now we're taking away freedom of choice for children as well when we do things like this.
Awesome. Speaking of freedom, on the flip side, there is California who bans book bans and textbook censorship in schools. So what do we think, you know, what can we do about this model being followed? What's happening in California that is so opposite that's happening in Georgia? So what do we think about in California, they've signed a ban to ban books, a ban for banning books.
Yeah, a ban against banning books.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be what California does, right? So, you know, they're going to be the 180-degree difference between this side and that side. So, and again, is this a matter of posturing, or are we trying to do something to prove a point? First of all, let's just all name this and say it out loud so others can hear it. You don't ban books, period. Like, you don't ban books. Kids, just like Dr. Meyer said, kids need to read. When a child is learning how to read, they want to gobble up reading. They want to gobble and read and practice and dabble and experiment. And, oh, I like this, but let me put it down. I don't want to do that. Let me go get something else. Let me do this. Let me do that. You know, like David said, he was looking for that mirror and he probably didn't find it. Right? Like, he didn't find the mirror that spoke to him. And I didn't find that exact mirror that spoke to me until I got older, until I realized, oh, there aren't enough books out here that speak to who I am as a person, where the characters look like me, or we're not, you know, all living in you know, abject situations, or we're not stereotyped. And we need to ask ourselves some questions about the representational balance of what's happening on pages anyway, right? How are people, cultures, and topics being depicted on pages? You know, when we think about, just take the topic of, say, pollution. If you're in second grade, the one thing a second grader learns is, if I'm a second grader, it's my job to fix pollution, right? Because we have all the little 7-year-olds running around scared, recycling everything, and, you know, they can't, you know, they go home and they drive their parents crazy. But we don't teach them that they have a responsibility, but they are in community with their government. They are in community with organizations, right? Like imagine a child in Flint, Michigan reading about pollution and telling them all they had to do was put their water bottle, out in the trash in the recycle bin. That's not what caused their water crisis. I bet you there were a whole bunch of 7th graders, 7-year-olds out there in Flint recycling bottles. But yet and still, are they being condescended to? How are they being treated as individual readers? And I think we have to ask ourselves some big questions, right? Like we have been down the book ban road before, right? Every so often the book ban comes back around. Barnes and Noble every year, Barnes and Noble, Amazon has a whole display. Here are all the books that have ever been banned. And here we are again. It's just this time it's different, right? Because it's really taking on this legal, this sort of legality that has not been felt before. We've been down this road before. So we got to understand why we're here again. What happened that got us here again? We have not done enough examination to help us understand why we keep coming back here. That's one thing. The other thing is we have to begin to ask ourselves some big questions. So you take books off shelves, then you have a standards issue because now kids can't meet standards because the standards call for a certain type of complexity. Now we can argue whether it's an arbitrary number, we can argue whether or not, that's right or wrong. But the more they take this reductive perspective on books, the less students are able to achieve the high standards that colleges are looking for because they will not be able to do the deep intellectual work necessary. So yes, we need to talk about banned books and we need to have a deeper conversation about the impact of that as well.
Thank you. Anybody else jumping in?
I agree.
Okay, right.
Yeah, what can I say to that?
Like mic dropped. Yes, Tangi.
I'll also say that Illinois has a law about that as well, and New York is looking at legislation that would do much the same thing. But it does create an issue of equity because you have so many young people who are living in places where book bans are legal, and then you have so many other young people living in places where book bans are encouraged by the government, which of course is a violation of, First Amendment and all these other parts of the Constitution. But then what do we do to address that gulf, that inequity that is existing?
One thing that I want to add as well is we are seeing an incredibly huge spike in mental health issues with children nowadays, especially adolescents. And it is because that is the age where they really need to belong to something. And we start banning books, then children who are LGBTQ plus IA, they don't have any, anyone to connect to, anything that looks like them, any hope. And same thing for, we just have to really be very careful, and we have to work to protect the rights of children. They have to be able to have connections. We're going to lose an entire generation of children if they are not able to make connections.
Speaking of making connections, are there any circumstances where you believe that book banning is appropriate?
I mean, I think we could make all sorts of scenarios where, we would say, yeah, you should. We can invent things where that happens. But I think when reasonable adults come together and have reasonable conversations, there's no reason to resort to any actions that are going to harm young people like a book ban does.
Sure. All right. I'm going to check the chat to see what questions we have from our viewers. And while we're doing that, I think we kind of covered what I wanted to make sure we left with was the action part of it, right? We know we would want to tell everyone to stop it, to stop the book bans. Right, David? We even want to say stop it. But what is being done, right? So what can we inform that people know what's happening and what they can continue to do to support the efforts?
Well, I think that, first of all, Ingrid, I have to say that you nailed it completely when you're talking a moment ago, because we all have to get involved with these young people and understand how deeply they're being harmed when they're deprived of an opportunity to see themselves, to see other children, and to find a way to identify with people in their past. And, that's so important to understand that the sense of aloneness that they'll feel. So I really thank you for bringing that up, because it is so true. But we all have to get involved. We all have to go to school board meetings, and we have to get in our local library boards, and we have to put pressure on people who are in power so that they know that this is not acceptable.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be big grand things, but everybody needs to take a turn lifting.
That's right, for sure.
All right, here's a question from our one viewer, and this question is for anyone. I am curious if you see any specific cases of challenged banned books being taken to the U.S. Supreme Court. If not, why? It's clear these challenges for far and away do not meet the standards laid out in PICO. If so, which one? And how do you think it would be settled with our current court?
Whew. Yeah, there was a time in which I would say, no, this will not rise to the level of the Supreme Court, right? Because it's happening on a state by state, district by district basis. I don't feel that way anymore. I think that there is a possibility. And I think it should almost happen on the side of those who are experiencing the ban. Right. I think it should happen on the side where the harm is being done. I think it has to constantly be pushing against the First Amendment. And I think that there are cases where the right to learn is another like through line, or like they're being robbed of their right to learn. And so that is a really important through line for educators, particularly families. So it has to happen on the family side. Right, so the family side's got to lead the way on this, and that they have to begin to use the same tactics, just in reverse. That my child's being robbed of their right to have a rich, thick, deep learning experience because their materials are being taken away. Right, they should really think about ways of bringing litigation against a school district, saying that their child is being robbed of their ability to meet state standards, right? Because they can take, they're going to take it back to the places where the numbers matter, right? So Florida is Florida is the second largest state of students having AP classes. Well, if all these parents and all these AP classes and all these books are being removed, now that status is being put in jeopardy. Well, there's a reason why that AP status matters in Florida, right? So you got to hit them at that emotional place and go after them in that way, doing it with coalitions, with groups, all those kinds of things. And here's the thing, nobody can stop you from having a borrowed book on your neighborhood like watch, right? Those like borrowed book, mailboxes. Nobody can stop that. Nobody can stop you having a banned book party in your home, right? So there are ways in which we can do some like fun, ways of doing this and good old fashioned protesting, but really thinking about this from a coalition building perspective would be really helpful.
I'm glad you said that, because that also answers someone else's questions about things that can be done to help kids access. And speaking of Florida, this question says, hello from Florida. Thank you for presenting this webinar. I would like to share the recording with colleagues. Here in Florida, even at the higher ed university level, we are indeed censored in what we teach. I think that many of us believe that change will come with the next generation. The new incoming teachers will be the next group of educators to influence young people to read and to discover the wondrous world through books. What might you share with professors in teacher preparation in Florida and other states with similar challenges who are strictly censored in how we support our incoming new teachers to develop their pedagogical practices that are based on a framework of equity and inclusion.
I would, first of all, and this may be the only comment I have to say in this, but I would reinforce that idea that young people are not going to stand up to having their rights taken away from them. We have a local school district that put up a slate of candidates from a certain political group that are in favor of banning books. And the young people in that school got together, they formed a coalition to fight this group of candidates. They endorsed their own group of candidates. They campaigned for them, and all of their endorsed candidates won. The student endorsed candidates won completely. The other group were sent packing with their tails between their legs. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And I think you're absolutely right that young people are the key to helping promote change, because they're not going to tolerate it.
I mean, and I don't want to be a voice hog here, so I'll be quiet until someone else goes.
Hey, go ahead.
I just think that in terms of what you need to do, number one, if it's around pedagogy is separate from the content you teach, right? So you're going to go ahead and teach them how to be good instructors, because that's the pedagogy. In terms of the content, that's the trick, right? So number one, you got to understand what's at stake. So if you're going to go down this road and you're going to put yourself on the line, be practical and understand that you got to have a good lawyer. So like, let's make this very, very practical. You're not going to come live with me because my house isn't big enough. So I'd love to invite you, but if you go, like, you can't come to Virginia because, but you got to have coalitions of people working together. So if you're about to buck the tide of the nameless governor of your state, be sure you're in partnership with the leadership of your school of education, the president of your university, right? So you have to have your leadership really behind you, understanding exactly the tactics you're going to take. Teaching young people how to be civilly disobedient and civilly minded is a huge way, just like David said. There's an organization here, Democracy, I think it's Democracy Now!, run by Karen Chenoweth, and I'll put her name in the chat here for you, everybody. She's doing a great work preparing people to be a part of, to run for school board, right? Run for the school board, get involved, ask the question about, so you're saying that we need to have these extra rights. Give me the original policy. Show me where your rights have been taken away from you, right? Or, and maybe even invite your enemy to your table for a discussion and give them the book and invite them into a book study, because a lot of them don't read. A lot of them just don't read. They have not read a thing. I promise you, they haven't read it.
That is so true. Absolutely true.
Yeah, they haven't read it. So invite them to a book study.
Yes.
And begin to open them up, because what they're doing is they're looking for antagonism. They are being prepared for a fight. So go in the opposite direction and invite them to the table and see what happens when you invite them to the table for a respectful dialogue on what their fears are, what their concerns are, and use what's called a yes and strategy, where you say, yes, I really appreciate this, and let's discuss this other thing, right? Use that kind of language and strategic move, because then you diffuse their dragon, because they are priming for a fight. So don't give it to them.
I think that's I see a question here that you kind of answered as well. And I have two that I want to get through really quickly, but I think what you just said, Dr. Marshall, is in line with how would you suggest I respond to a book banner if I end up in a conversation with them, right?
I love this idea. Your language frame. I appreciate that
Yes.
you want to
Mhm,
protect your child.
mhm.
I love that because every parent ought to have the right to protect their child. Can you help me understand why you want to take my right away from me? Because I want my child to read. So really like diffusing that dragon, really lean into appreciating that they think they're doing the right thing. I just don't quite understand, like ignorance your best friend. Like I just don't quite understand why you want why my right, like why is my right being taken away?
David, how can we get these language frames and questions somewhere that everyone can get them? That's excellent.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. And I think that um, if you look at the national groups or the local regional groups, your library organizations, your library associations, some of these other groups, some of these conversations are happening, and there is great advice about how to deal with these things, to deal with these questions. There's toolkits out there that look at these things. So again, you're not alone if you're dealing with that, and if you want to go into that fight, which everyone should, anyone who cares about a kid should want to go into this fight, then you can find resources and ways to arm yourself with information and strategies.
So, because someone asked also, are there any talking points that parents could find to speak at school board meetings and such? So would that be there as well?
Yeah, there's that information out there as well. Look at some of the organizations. I can send out a list of them if people don't have access to that, but yeah, they're definitely out there.
Awesome.
And can I just say one thing? I just want to say, I mean, I'm sure everybody already knows this, but librarians on the front line of this fight. When my books have been banned, it's librarians who have reached out to me to let me know what was happening. And I think that one of the most radical things that I've seen librarians do is invite authors who've been banned to these school board meetings. And what happens is the people who are banning the books don't show up. They just don't show up. But I would encourage people in Florida to continue to ask those of us whose books are being banned to come talk to the students and to the potential people who want to ban the book. I think public conversation, not necessarily fights, but I think what you find out is like these people publicly, if you look around the internet, you don't find a lot of public conversations with these folks because they can't substantiate their claims. But I think that should not stop us from inviting them to public conversations at each and every turn, especially around school boards. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Have you been contacted directly? Like, what does that look like when folks put you on the banned book list?
I mean, what it looks like for me is the librarians hit me up, DM me or whatever, say, this is on the low. Please don't let anybody know. But we heard from a school board that your book is going to be banned. Like that's what happened in Missouri. And, I think I told y'all this. They're like, your book and Toni Morrison are going to be banned and George Johnson and someone who had their book banned. I was like, I thought I won something. I'm on a list with Toni Morrison. You know what I'm saying? And then that's another thing we need to talk about, like the audacity of these people to not want their children to read Morrison. Like, how much must you hate your child if you don't want your child to read Morrison? But it's the librarians. I just want to just continually say that it is the librarians who are fighting this so hard, y'all. But as David said earlier, we all kind of need to take turns with this fight because it is not about the librarians. So they are fighting for what they care and care about so dearly. And I think we need to help our children out, but also help the librarians out because they're the ones I think like doing the heavy lifting here.
Awesome. And maybe if I can squeeze one more question before we wrap up. Look how quickly this time went. Oh my goodness. This one is, do you feel that book banning can be viewed as a plot against the post-secondary attainment of Black and Brown students when we know that higher SAT, ACT scores are directly correlated with students who read more? I feel that book banning is adding to their lack of motivation. What are your thoughts?
I definitely think yes. Once again, it always goes back to interests and being able to see yourself in the book, being able to have shared experiences, being able to really want to be a part of what you're reading. It goes back to your high interest. We do know that research has shown that children who have access to books and have more books at home, those are the ones who go to college. Those are the ones who achieve better, achieve more and achieve better. Yes, this does. I mean, we know that increased reading increases comprehension. Your comprehension is directly related to these ACTs and SATs. And so we are, you know, um, minimizing what our children can do, children of color can do, brown children, just all the way around, when we don't provide books to them that that are related to their cultural experiences, and things like that. And banning Toni Morrison, we're now limiting, and same thing with Kiese's book, heavy. When we start banning books like that, we are taking away shared experiences.
Yes, yes. This was phenomenal. And the resources are amazing. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to call on our co-acting associate dean, or co-acting dean, Rodney Hobson. Dr. Hobson?
Yeah, I'm moved by this. I can't actually enable my video right now, no problem, but maybe you can hear my voice.
Yes, we hear you well.
I just want to thank you all for showing up. What a great and lively discussion at the moment. It's a discussion that we're not done with. I loved hearing Tanji say, basically, read with me, engage with me. I loved the Prof. Lehman's asking, why would someone hate their child as much to let, just the thoughtfulness, the questions, the personal stories, the strategies, the resources. You got me thinking about two things as we close. One, that poem by that pastor, Niemoller, I believe. It was like, first they came for me and then they came for, right? And so when you think about book bans, like, I can't help but think about that plea. First you came for them, then you came for us, and we were silent, and now we're silent. And so that poem it rings to me. Another poem that rings to me, and I don't know if these poems eventually might be banned themselves, is a poem by Claude McKay, If We Must Die. That story about how we wanted to hold on to our dignity in moments of lynching. Like, if we must die, let it not be like hogs lynched in this glorious lot. Like, if we must ban books, let those books not be those at our expense and our dignity. So I just really loved what you all have brought, the panelists. Thank you, David, again, for your selfless service, not just to your larger organization in AU, but citizenry as a whole, and your work. Prof, as well, in terms of your work that you're doing. Can't wait to get my hands on these books, sharing with my nieces and nephews. Principal Bynum, we support you in your own run, and your own platform. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Tanji as well, for sharing. We know your work is not just in classrooms, but it's also in the communities, and we want to support you at Cheze as well for moderating. We are so excited for you all and for your sharing. Big Ideas Committee, for those of our faculty and staff that have worked tirelessly to put this together, and a few more that they will put together next semester. And for those of you who showed up tonight, stay tuned for more ways in which the School of Education at AU will continue to transform education and schooling in the US and beyond. Thank you again, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. And Dr. Marshall, can you throw your title of your book in the chat real quick for everyone to see? And I think
I was talking. Yeah, here's my book title is, I'll say it for you and then I'll type it in the chat. The title of the book is Understanding Your Instructional Power, Curriculum and Language Decisions to Support Each Student. And I'll type it right here.
Thank
And
you.
I also put in there, just a way for folks, if they want to continue to be connected, I put my link in there as well. So folks want to do that. Folks who are here and those on the Q&A as well.
Perfect. And we're certainly going to be following you, Mrs. Virginia.
Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to more projects that you have coming up, KSA.
And we'll make available the audio and video and transcripts on our website in the next day for everyone who attended this evening. We'll make that on the website.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Pleasure to
very
meet you.
much.
Have a good night.